I also, today, want to have a look at an interview between The Economist, the editor-in-chief at The Economist, and Elon Musk, right? So this is about a 90-minute conversation that they have, and they touch on a lot of interesting things, right? Some points of agreement, and I'll get into that, right? So what is discussed during this interview? It's at the Tesla factory in Texas. They sit down and they go over a whole host of things. So I'd say the first part of the conversation was on AI, was on Tesla, SpaceX, humanoid robots, everything that relates to what Elon is doing at the moment, right? And I'm not against any of this. I think it's all very inventive and good, and I think he's doing a good job, and he seems like that's sort of his thing, and that's great, right? They discussed that for the first part of the show. There is some agreement, right? And he makes some good points. He speaks about AI, and he says, look, we had people in tall skyscrapers in massive buildings some time ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when computers weren't as prevalent and big and accessible as they are today. And they were calculating interest rates, and it was just a full skyscraper of people calculating interest rates. And that was their job, right? Because there was no computer to do it. Fast forward to today, those skyscrapers are not full of people calculating interest rates because the computers do that now. And he said, just like their job was replaced by the computers, there are going to be certain jobs that are replaced by AI, and it's already happening. And I don't disagree. I think that's actually a very good point. I think that is just sort of the modern age we live in today, the information age we live in today, right? However, and to be fair, there's also some more agreement on Ukraine. I think what he said there is true, right? There are no angels in war. That's true. Because I don't know, a lot of these, especially writers who write for The Economist or The Spectator, they tend to be very liberal on the Ukraine issue. But Zelensky is not a good guy, just as Putin's not a good guy, right? They've all done bad things. And for Zelensky to keep on thinking that he can keep on pushing and pushing and pushing, he's going to get his land back, it's not going to work, right? So there is agreement there. And I think Elon's right on that issue. And he's been helping Ukraine, so he can say this, right? There's agreement there. There's some agreement on USAID, right? Because they discussed that also, where as a part of Elon's Doge initiative, Department of Government Efficiency, he cut a lot of aid, right, going to all sorts of parts of the world. And I think for the most part, he was right to do that. However, during the, I'd say maybe last 15 or 20 minutes of the interview, they discussed Europe. They discussed the far right. They even discussed Citizen Vigilante, right, which is a movie we discussed on the show a few weeks ago. And this is where there is some disagreement, right? Because Elon is someone who's living in the United States, who is constantly on Twitter, right, and constantly pushing these viewpoints, right, these perspectives. Oh, Europe's being overrun by Muslims. It's being overrun by foreigners, by immigrants, and the same thing Tommy's doing, right? And they've been helping each other out on Twitter. They've been commenting under each other's posts concerning, oh, this is terrible, this is bad. And the interviewer clearly asks Elon, when's the last time you were in the UK? When's the last time you were in the UK? And what happens? Oh, it's a few years ago. She lives in the UK. I live in the UK. There are many people that live here in the UK, and they'll all tell you, this is nonsense. This is nonsense. To think that what percent of the UK is Muslim? Less than 10%. A few million are Muslim. A few million, 3 or 4 million. When we have a population size of 70 million, you're saying it's been overrun by Muslims. You don't know what you're talking about, right? So they talk about, oh, we don't want these countries for the white to become the minority. It's not going to happen. And actually, there's more of a chance for it to happen in the United States than to happen here in the UK. So why don't you focus on your own country? And this is the big point. This is the major point here, is that he criticizes Europe. He criticizes the UK. But when we look at the United States, who, I'm not I'm quite fond of myself, but you got to call a spade, right? When we look at the United States, he says, I want safe cities. I want sensible spending. I want safe cities. I want sensible spending. And I want strong borders, is what he says. Those are the three. That's all I want. I'm not far, right? That's all I want, right? Okay, well, let's have a look in the United States. Safe cities. You take any city in the United States, London is far safer. Manchester, Birmingham, any of the major cities in the UK, far safer than any of the major cities in the United States. London's just had its lowest per capita murder rate since records began. It's had its lowest homicide rate in over 30 years, right? Safety in London's at an all-time high, right? Crime in London's at an all-time low. And you're talking about London's being overrun by Muslims. Oh, London has Sharia law. Do you even live in the UK? And we know that you don't, of course, right? And we can see that. So, yes, pretty much every major European city is safer than the cities in the United States, okay? So focus on your own country before looking at ours, right? What else does he say? He wants sensible spending. Sensible spending when your country is what, I mean, have you saw the deficit? You haven't had a president who's balanced the budget since 2001 under Bill Clinton. There hasn't been a president in over 20 years who's balanced the budget. Your deficit is at, what is it, a 47-year high? We've got a 6-year low deficit here in the UK, right? A 6-year deficit. Ours is shrinking, our deficit. Yours is growing, right? So sensible spending, you need to worry about your own country, right? And people could say, well, look, he isn't the president, but he has his hands in politics. So if he's trying to change and completely dismantle our politics for whatever he wants, then why don't you focus on your own politics first before looking at ours, right? What's the final point he makes? He talked about strong borders, right? This is quite a good point, I guess. But when you actually look at the facts, our immigration policy wasn't great. I'd say maybe 2 years ago, and then before that under the Conservative government, but it's actually got significantly better. Net migration's down 82%. Small boats are up at the moment, but out of net migration, I think small boats are less than 5%. So it's less than 5% of net immigration. It's not a big deal whatsoever. And they're getting that down anyway, right? Shabana Mahmood is getting that down. As much as I'm not a huge fan of her, she is getting it down. She's getting the job done, right? So, and asylum claims are down also, right? Asylum claims are down. Net migration's down 82%, massive, and they're not happy. Still, the far right in this country, and Elon's here speaking about a country that he doesn't even live in, he doesn't even reside in, right? He says, "Oh, I'll take you. Let's go on a tour in the UK." He'll look at it and he'll think, "Well, oh, I guess it is just Twitter videos because that's all it is, right?" So, I mean, I guess you could argue that the border policy in the United States is currently better than the UK's, but it wasn't under Biden. And really, it's just border crossings. Border crossings are very low at the moment, but that's just because they've got Trump in charge. But there are still millions of illegals in the United States. There are more illegals in the United States than there are illegals in the UK. I don't even think there are 1 million illegals in the UK, right? I think they estimate it somewhere around 500 to 800,000, right? So, and in the United States, there's upwards of 10 million illegals. Like we just said earlier, Trump hasn't even deported 500,000 illegals, right? So there's still loads, right? Upwards of 10 million illegals in the United States. So in fact, actually, I would not concede on that point, and I would say safe cities, sensible spending, and strong borders. Europe beats the United States on that tenfold every single time. right? So focus on your own country, Elon. You don't really know how Europe works. You don't really know what's going on in Europe. Focus on the United States, and then we can talk, right? Then we can talk. But yeah, an interesting interview. I thought I'd discuss that because we do need to clear up some misconceptions when they're said, especially from the world's richest man who owns Twitter, right? Who owns a massive social media platform with hundreds of millions of users.